Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and it is the moment of truth. This is a major tuning pass, the last one before BlizzCon, although they might alter it based on feedback on Monday as they did with the previous week. But this is the first look at it to see what exactly are their intentions and what are their plans and goals with the game. This is obviously a major one, given that Season 2 really needs to do well. And then obviously BlizzCon for Mythic Plus and PvP. So if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Frosty-K's, I can already tell that you are probably going to be pretty happy about this first thing that is occurring on this. Howling Blast is getting a 15% damage buff on main target, 15% obliterate, 20% frost strike damage, and 10% melee damage. That is a meta-defining amount of change right there, I think in PvP at least. In PvE, I don't know how dependent it is on those spells, if there's other AoE abilities that are more valuable, but in PvP, pretty much every single one of those is your most valuable ability. That is very big. That Frosty K is definitely, at least aggressively, is back in PvP. It might not matter if your defense is weak. The other team will just be completely dead before they even get to you. That is pretty big. Havoc Demon Hunters are getting 4% damage, but not in PvP. Vengeance Demon Hunters, they are buffing you, it looks like here. They believe you're performing below. I think tank balance is good for Mythic Plus, so Demonic Wards is going to reduce damage by 15%, up from 12. Hopefully they don't, I don't know if this is only available to Vengeance, but hopefully this isn't get applied to Havoc indirectly or something. Void Reaver now causes Frailty to reduce damage taken by 6%, up from 5, and Fell Devastation Healing is up by 25%. So a little bit of a tune-up for Vengeance. For Druids, Shred is getting a 10% damage buff for all specs. So if you're a Kitty Weaver or if you were a Feral Druid, a little 10% there. Not too bad. For Boomkin, 4% damage buff, but not in PvP. I think it makes sense. For Feral Druid, you're going to get some buffs here from Mythic Plus. So they're buffing all damage by 5%, but this will not be in PvP. However, the auto attack and Ferocious Bite 10% will be in PvP. Now, I don't know if this is a big deal or not. Again, if Ferocious Bite, a lot of people are saying Ferocious Bite was weak, so 10% might not be major on it, but it's still more than nothing if we add that into account with the 15% bleed buff from last week. I'm very surprised Resto Druid's getting a 4% healing increase in PvP. It seems entirely unnecessary. I think that this should not go in PvP. I think Resto Druid is likely going to be, the most dominant healer, one of the most dominant healers. This seems a bit unnecessary. For Beast Mastery Hunters, they're getting a 7% damage buff. This, again, I think maybe we'll have to wait and see what the PvP section says down below, because I scrolled past it and I do think there was nerfs to BM Hunter, so maybe this is taking into account this buff, because that would be crazy for that, and then nothing else on top of that. For Survival Hunter, they are buffing all damage by 7%, and this increases only 3% when engaged in PvP combat. So half of that, basically, you're going to get to keep as survival in PvP. So a little bit of a tweak there. Fire Mage is getting buffed 3% damage. Again, in PvE, I think that makes sense. All the mage specs are performing less than Arcane. Frost is also getting a 6% damage buff, and that will be in PvP. We'll have to see what the PvP changes say down below for this, because I think Mage is getting nerfed as well. But this 6% is actually, I think, pretty significant for Frost. For Mistweaver Monk, they are buffing you by 5% overall, and they are increasing your 4-set bonus. So its chance to activate is being increased by 20 to 25. I think that seems like a reasonable, it's not huge. It increases all the values on everything. Mistweaver definitely needed to get buffed, so I think that's all right. Windwalker's getting a 4. See, this is what's kind of insane to me. Windwalker gets a 4% damage buff, but not in PvP. But BM Hunter got one. Mage got one. That's a bit concerning. For Prot Paladins, I'm surprised they didn't counteract this either, because they've spent the last, I don't know how many PvP tuning passes, I think, nerfing this Blaze of Glory damage, and now it's getting a 150% buff, which is probably just going to completely negate the nerfs previously to that, prior to it. Consecration by 30%, Divide Guidance by 30%. I'm pretty happy to play Prot Paladin and Mythic Plus when I come back from BlizzCon, though, after that. It's a lot of damage. I'm worried that makes Prot Paladin good in PvP by too much. And then Shadow Mend is getting its mana cost reduced by 20%, which that's going to help you competitively in PvP as well, for sure. Mana issues definitely historically a problem for you. This is interesting. So for PvP right off the rip here, healers are able to top off targets too quickly, resulting in very long combat times. We are reducing the primary stat PvP trinket set bonus for all healer specs to increase the pace of combat. So all healers are basically losing 5% primary stat. across the board. I'm wondering if this is it kind of feels like that's the right play, but is there any like significant outliers that needed to be directly nerfed, right? This is like a blanket nerf. Sometimes this is appropriate, sometimes it's not. I think this might be the situation where it is. I'm leaning into it probably is, as opposed to not. Devourer Demon Hunters are getting a compensation buff of 5% more damage. They're nerfing Rain from Above. I'm honestly not surprised, just because everybody's re-rolling to this. It's only going to do 6% of max health, down from 8. Innervate is now going to grant 20% mana in PvP combat. It was previously 25%. Did they rework Innervate to... I thought Innervate just made your spells free. They must have changed that at some point to be actually a mana regeneration as opposed to that. So... was Innervate really a big problem for other than Resto Druid? That's interesting. For Feral Druid, they're actually buffing Druid of the Claw again to try and help you out, I think. So they are increasing Feral's general damage, especially Druid of the Claw, and nudging down their defensives to speed up the pace of combat. Are they really that tanky? So Druid of the Claw Ravage is getting another 15% buff. Survival Instincts is only going to reduce damage by 40%, down from 50. Is Feral really like an outlier for tankiness? I mean, the entire purpose of this patch was to lower the effectiveness of cooldowns. So I mean, it's one step towards that, but I don't know if I don't know if Feral was that much of an outlier. For Resto Druids, okay, so we are increasing their overall healing while at the same time reducing the power of Swift Mend and some of their mana regeneration talents. The goal is to better balance Restoration's healing kit to not be so reliant on Swift Mend to top up allies. Potent Enchantments increases the duration of Incarnate Tree of Life by only 4 seconds, down from 6. Reforestation grants Incarnation Tree of Life for 8 seconds, down from 10. Swift Mend healing reduced by 20% in PvP. Blossom Burst Ancient of Lore costs 1.89% mana. Previously it was free. And Blossom Bloom now prioritizes applying Rejuve over Life Bloom. And Mass Blooming Ancient of Lore costs 3.6% mana, was free. I mean, basically just doing less healing. What? All I'm reading from that is, I guess, the buff up top, right? They're talking about the 5% overall healing increase. So you're going to be less spiky. I feel like it's tough to even get the Druid to the point where the spiky healing is even noticeable at the moment. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of Druids playing this either. I mean, this makes it seem like it would be a significantly weaker option. Less Tree of Life, though. Less instant regrowths. I think this is... I mean, this is... I don't honestly know what to think about this. What the impacts of that are going to be. Devastation Evoker. The Flame Shaper build is not being utilized much compared to Scale Commander. We're increasing the power of Flame Shaper. Disintegrate triggers Consume Flame at 200% effectiveness, up from 150. And Kindle damage is increased by 30% in PvP, up from 20. And Expanded Lungs increases the damage of Fire Breath's periodic damage by 40%, up from 30. Again, numbers like this, I have never seen a Flame Shaper Evoker to know how much these hit baseline, right? Like, is a 10% increase enough? Because last week we saw Shadow Word Death get like a, what was it, like a 30%? It might have been lower than that, like a 20% buff. And it basically still doesn't hit for any damage. So it's kind of similar to with the Feral Druid, right? They increased Ravage last week, now they're increasing it again. So it's just a matter of, is that actually enough to move it or not? And I've never seen one, so I don't actually know if that's going to be enough. For Preservation Evoker, they're buffing your mana regeneration by 5%. So trying to lower mana regeneration from Druid, up Prez, and up Disc a bit. Is what it looks like for there. And okay, here it is. BM Hunter's not getting off without a hitch. They're going to nerf Bloodshed. That's a 25%, but they did buff you by 7, so it's not the full 25%. And Bestial Wrath's initial damage will do 10% less. And Pack Leader Stampede is going to do 10% less. This is the big window that does do a lot. So like 25% on that actually is a lot, but the 7% to compensate makes it more like, you know, almost a 15% nerf rather than a 25% nerf. But it is a nerf. So BM Hunter should be slightly weaker. And then this change that came in. Okay, so they negated it here. This is strange to me that this is put here instead of up top with all the other ones that were put up top. But Fire's not going to get the 3% damage buff. What is going on up here too, though? What is this? Mages have been extending the duration of PvP matches with frequent access to strong defensive ability. So we're reducing the effectiveness of their barriers. And the cooldown of Ice Block. Fire damage is also being reduced to bring them in line. So, well, it's being brought back to where it was before with the buff up top, but improved Conjuration reduces the cooldown of Mirror Images by 15 seconds. Winter's Protection reduces the cooldown of Ice Block by 15 to 30. The tooltip in PvP will be updated in a later patch. So less frequent Ice Blocks. Is that enough frequency? I'm not sure. Again, with the healer nerf, maybe it would be. But the barrier nerf is a big one, right? 25% less on prismatic, 25% less on blazing, and 25% less on ice barrier. And I want to note that last season they buffed barriers by 20%, and that's when mages became unkillable, and or at least frost at least. So this is almost by basically the same value of reduction that we saw with the increase from last season. So this likely will hit mage pretty significantly. I don't know about the block one. It depends on the pacing of the game. If games are going long enough that you can survive that interval, then this change doesn't do anything. But if they don't, then this change will affect that interval. So it really depends. There's too much changing right now to be able to detect that or not. For Discipline Priest, it's also getting something. So Void Shield Absorption is being increased by 10%. Powered Shield Absorption is being increased by 10%. And Atonement Healing is being increased by 5%. Disc is getting a lot of buffs. That's a lot of buffs. Okay. No nerf to Holy, though. Nothing for Shadow. Really disappointed in that. I was hoping Shadow or Death would get buffed again. For Rogue, what is going on here? Defensive potential improves in coordinated play and as ratings increase, with the predictive effect of preemptive maneuver standing out as being too rewarding. So it's being brought down to be more appropriate. I assume this is the Feint talent. So it's only going to reduce damage by 25% instead of 40%. Which, let's be real here, right? Like, that Feint talent was even stronger than Blur, and Blur got hit way harder than that. So I think that's good. The fact that they're actually willing to nerf mage defense and rogue defense, I think is a good sign, because that's actually a good sign. And then Assassination additionally is going to do 4% less damage. I think it's still going to be in a good spot even despite that. But like this is pretty major for damage reduction portions on this, on Feint. So those are like the two main outliers, honestly, the barriers and the Feint. So some pretty significant things being targeted for Rogue and Mage. Not sure what to think of Druid, though. Elemental is on here. We're not being forgotten. Shadow, unfortunately, you guys are boned. But Elemental's Farseer hero talent tree is performing better than expected defensively. Oh, they're gonna nerf your Nature's Guardian. And the Stormbringer hero talent tree is performing below expectations offensively. As a result, we're targeting key effects of each type to adjust natural harmony's improvement for the Nature's Guardian effect are being diminished, while multiple key Stormbringer effects, including Tempest, are receiving buffs. So natural harmony, this is the one thing that was going to enable Farseer to maybe compete at BlizzCon, though. So how much are they nerfing it? What are all these like asterisks? Natural harmony now reduces the cooldown of Nature's Guardian only by 10 seconds, down from 15, and increases its healing only by 5% of max health by 10. So it's almost a 50% nerf. It still heals a lot. It's still probably okay. And then for Stormbringer, Tempest is getting a 20% damage. Natural Gift will increase nature damage by 4% up from 2. So there's a little bit of lightning bolt damage. Stormcaller now increases nature spell critical strike damage by 10% up from 5. I think the most noticeable one will be the Tempest. I do actually wonder what this is going to do to the viability of Ellie or not, if it's going to hit them too hard. But again, they're trying to speed up the game. I think they're acknowledging that there's some mechanics that are too strong. And that was one of the ones that was like you to heal a target to full health, right? Enhance is getting something. So they're actually nerfing Healing Surge by 20%, but they're buffing Storm Strike by 15, and they're buffing Lava Lash by 15. I kind of feel like you end up weaker overall after that. I mean, again, it's the right abilities, right direction. I just don't know if it's by the right value. Because on my Shaman, at least, Storm Strike just felt like it's tickling people. Lava Lash was kind of tickling people. I think it's the right direction. I just don't know if the numbers are right. And if the numbers aren't right, you get a situation with like Shadow, where Shadow or Death still just doesn't. It does more damage to you than it does to the target. So it could be rough. And even Warrior, what is this? Arms and Fury provide strong group defensive utility through Safeguard, but the frequency of damage reduction prevented enemy teams from having a window to strike. So Intervene's cooldown is going up by 20 seconds if you play Safeguard for Fury and Arms. So they nerf defense across the board. On Feral, on Warrior, on Rogue, on Mage. They nerf defense on all of those, and they've nerfed healing overall. This is a lot. This is a lot to take in. And to kind of sequester what the result of this is actually going to be. Like, this is pretty significant. I think Druid probably still gets off pretty easy with this. Is it still going to be the best healer after these disc buffs, though? I mean, we're going to have to see this play out. This is going to be hard. The good news is that they were willing to nerf Rogue Mage, and they targeted the things that are actually, like, the most problematic with them. with this one. So definitely some significance there. Obviously, all DPS specs are increased in value. Destro might still be shaky defensively. Would have liked to see Shadow of Death buffed again by a more significant margin. Some things I did not expect, but maybe these are also anticipating, like if we nerf mage defense and rogue defense, then warrior defense is going to be a problem, and maybe feral defense too, and that's why they're preempting it with the changes that they're doing to make that make more sense after the fact. I don't know if this is enough again on Ravage. Again, I don't see anyone ever play these builds, so I don't know how much damage that ability does to know how significant 15% is on that, much like the Flame Shaper one. Also, would have been nice to see like a Elun's Chosen Boomkin buff too. That no one's going to play that here, I don't think. See a little bit of Starfire damage buff there, but I think this is pretty good. I think this is pretty good. It's not. I mean, some of this is pretty major. Like this Frosty Gate stuff seems pretty major. I don't know what to expect. This is the first time I've read this, and I'm like, I don't really know what to expect 100%. We're gonna have to kind of wait and see and play this out to see the full implications of this and what the result is. Because these are major. These are big. But that's it for now. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the update and the breakdown, and I will see you in the next one.